Well, hi, hello, and welcome to Unified Storage Solutions for an Always-On World. Now, today's webinar is sponsored by Nutanix and Pure Software and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Jess Steinbach, and I'm with Actual Tech Media, and I'm so happy that I get to be your moderator for this conversation today because, hey, we do live in this always-on world, right? And I was thinking about this morning, do you all remember back to a time when TV actually ended? There was like an off hour that we hit and it went to dead air, it went to a network image. And that just doesn't happen anymore, right? Like there were times in our lives where we stopped, where things slowed down, and we all agreed, off air. We are off air right now, but we don't have that anymore. There's no downtimes. There's no off hours built into our lives, into our schedules. We are go, go, go all the time, and it is no different with our data. So if you are planning for your file, object, and block needs, that also matches your cybersecurity planning. If you're thinking about application and data performance coupled with resilience, efficiency, and interoperability, you are in good company today. And we have some incredible experts here with us to provide important information and insight. And I cannot wait to get started on this conversation. So I am going to zip through a few of the important housekeeping points and get us on our way today. All right, let's start with a little tour of your audience console because that is an important place to start. And in fact, I want to kick things off in the questions tab. Now, if you have not already given the questions tab a little test run, say hi, say hello, let us know how you're doing today. I see some wonderful folks here with us already. I've got John, Greg, Rakesh, Corey, we've got a whole crew. We definitely want to hear from you throughout the day today. Now, especially we want to get those questions, those comments, any ideas, general wonderings, musings on life, whatever you've got going on in your head, we want to hear from you. Our expert presenters want to chat with you, and we're going to get into some audience Q&A at the end. So make sure you get those questions in. Now, not only is that a great place to say hi, hello, reach out to the community, get those questions in. That questions window is also where you're going to let us know if you have any technical issues. Hopefully that doesn't come up today, but if it does, the very first thing you're going to try is a browser refresh. I promise you a browser refresh is going to clear out most of the usual tech gremlins, but if they really have a hold of you today, no problem. You're going to shoot a message in that questions window and the Actual Tech Media crew will be there to help you out. All right, so we started in the questions window. Now we're going to go one tab over in that window, and I want you to take a look at the handout section right there next to it. You're going to find some really exciting content and takeaways to go along with our webinar today. I promise you're going to want to spend some time with them after we wrap. So open those tabs, but save them. Don't go too far down the rabbit hole just yet because we've got a lot of great content coming your way. So come back to those once we leave, but stay with us now. We got some great conversation headed at you. Now, it is not just exciting conversations and cool content that we've got for you today. We also have a $250 Amazon gift card that you could win right here at the webinar. That's going to go to someone live, present, and as always, a little bit lucky at the webinar. And you do need to meet all the Actual Tech Media price terms and conditions. If you're not sure what those T's and C's are, no problem. We've got the full terms and conditions linked for you in the handouts tab that we were just chatting about. So you can click and scroll all the way down to the bottom and you will find them waiting for you there. All right, well, that was it for the housekeeping. I promised to keep it short and sweet so we could get into our webinar, and I am so excited to introduce you all to our speakers here with us today. And this is an especially cool duo here with us because we have two partners bringing together ideas and supercharging those solutions, and I absolutely love when we get to talk about partnerships like this. So I am so happy that I get to introduce you all to Mike McGee, Director, Technical Marketing, NC2 NUSNDB at Nutanix. That is the coolest, most alliterative title there, Mike. And Peter Gard, Director, Technical Services at Pure Software. Now, I know we've got a lot to cover. We want to leave some time for questions at the end. So Mike and Pete, I am going to join you again shortly for some Q&A. But for now, I'm going to hand things on over to you. Mike, take it away.
All right, Jess, thank you so much. Very happy to be here. I'm going to step through some of the challenges that we're seeing in the industry around unstructured data as kind of a way to kick us off. We're going to keep this presentation crisp and to the point and give you the information that you really need. So to start out, some of the challenges that we're seeing in the industry is just the sheer amount of data, specifically unstructured data that our prospects and customers are dealing with. So multiple different industry analysts that are out there. One in particular is saying there's over 181 zettabytes of data being created and consumed every single day. Of that, over 80% or so is actually unstructured data. And when we're talking unstructured data, we're really talking about file data, so the SMB protocol, the NFS protocol, and also objects-based data, so most commonly accessed via the S3 protocol. And then of that large amount of data that's mostly unstructured, we're seeing more and more that it's living on the edge. So it's not just in core data centers, it's not just in the public cloud, it's also in edge locations. So we really need to be able to handle this deluge of information, but really manage it in specific locations based on your requirements, based on your data centers and your needs. Along with those challenges, a lot of CIOs are looking to consolidate. And you can see as a part of the CIO survey, one of the top areas for consolidation is data storage and databases. So think of the challenge of being able to deploy an environment where you need, whether it's the edge, a core data center, or the cloud, but doing so with a consolidated platform to keep things as simple as possible. Now, while you have that challenge of right sizing based on where you need this data to live, at the same time, you have major security concerns. And a lot of times this comes around cybersecurity and even ransomware, where you're not necessarily looking to consolidate the platforms or the technologies you might use. You're really looking for best of breed. So how do I marry these two things together? Being able to have a common platform consolidate what you might be using, while at the same time getting the best of breed cybersecurity based technology to protect your data and keep your underlying business running. Now, when we combine those challenges, and honestly, when we talk to you about your challenges, it really falls into these five main buckets. The most common, again, being these inefficient storage silos. When we're talking about installing something in an edge site, in your core data center, in the public cloud, a lot of times you're talking about different technologies. So you're not using a common platform. You might be using different point solutions. And not only that, maybe different point solutions based on your requirements. If it's a file serving scenario, or if you're using something for end user computing or VDI, versus if you're looking at unstructured data within S3, you might be talking about different software and different hardware stacks. So is there a solution out there to help you get a common way in which to manage it? And on top of this, you're dealing with other data too, right? We're talking unstructured, but you might be running databases, you might be doing virtualization, you might be running containerization, things like Kubernetes. So, is there a way to get a common platform to address all that? At the same time, you want to solve for that specific use case. In some cases, in an edge site, a distribution center, maybe a point of sale, you're looking for something small. Whereas in a core data center, you might be looking to consolidate a very massive amount of data. So again, you might have a point solution that scales very large well, but does not scale down to a smaller size very efficiently, and vice versa. So how do you get the best out of that scenario where you might have competing use cases based on density? And then, like we mentioned, at the same time, most companies at this point are looking to do some kind of hybrid or multi-cloud scenario. So that would be a deployment within your data center. It could be a deployment within the public cloud or across multiple data centers, or even multiple public clouds. How do you have a single solution as opposed to multiple pieces of software or hardware to address that concern as well? And as you're dealing with that, again, focusing on understanding what's going on, tying to cybersecurity, ransomware protection, et cetera, how do you really understand and remove that data blindness from that underlying infrastructure? Again, if you're working against different protocols in different sites based on different densities and maybe the edge or hybrid cloud, how do you get a common way in which to view this information and to make business decisions? Like how is my storage utilization within a particular site? How might I consolidate some of this information? What are the actual users doing against this data? Is there any anomalies that I should be aware of? Are there even more specific patterns that could resemble a ransomware attack? So having a consolidated platform with a simple means of discovering that is going to help you with your security basis and help prevent some of those crippling ransomware attacks that can occur. So at Nutanix, you might have been familiar with Nutanix based on industry term called hyperconverged infrastructure, or HCI. That's how many people know Nutanix. That's really where you take just a server-based compute platform with some amount of compute, so some amount of memory, some amount of CPU, and internal storage, and turn that into a single platform. So really a single distributed storage fabric running virtualization onto which you can run your applications. So this for Nutanix, this was a multi-hypervisor approach. So you can run your virtualization on our platform very efficiently within your data center, leveraging HCI. We've since grown this underlying platform to accommodate not just virtualization, so to also incorporate things like Kubernetes and containerization. And we further expanded it for the purposes of this conversation to include unified storage, or what we call Nutanix Unified Storage, or NUS for short. And what NUS provides you is specific unstructured data services, so file services like we mentioned earlier, so being the SMB protocol, the NFS protocol, so common file sharing capabilities, as well as object services. And this is very specifically is an S3-based API service for your underlying unstructured data, living on that exact same platform. Now we have another service included within Unified Storage. We refer to that as our volume service, which is really our block service, more commonly used for bare metal databases, exporting over iSCSI to bare metal servers, and again, most commonly to run like a SQL Server, Oracle database, or some of the open source databases that are out there. Again, for this conversation, we're focusing a bit more on the unstructured data piece around files and objects. So I mentioned these can run as purpose-built services on that same underlying platform, our HCI-based platform. And you can do this in various ways. So a common way is to leverage both our hyperconverged infrastructure and these unified storage services on the exact same hardware. So we refer to that as like a mixed environment or a hyperconverged environment where you're co-locating these services. And that's very common in core data centers, but also at the edge. So combining, you might have directory services or DNS or network time or application-specific services that you would run on this HCI platform, and then in parallel at the same time have a file server for various reasons, whether that's for your end user computing, profile data, video surveillance, you name it, right? Really any use case where you can apply these underlying services. At the same time, you can install object services on that same hyperconverged environment and really mix and match what you need. And we have a single licensing structure for that. But if you start getting to the denser use cases, like we talked about earlier, we now support 500 terabytes plus per physical node for these very, very dense use cases. In that case, you might want to do a dedicated platform. So instead of running HCI, running a hypervisor for the purposes of running a bunch of VMs, you would really just create a dedicated storage platform, again, using the exact same software, running these storage services. We refer to that as a dedicated deployment. So whether you're running a mixed environment or running a dedicated environment, it's one licensing that you can use for these unified storage services. And again, you can mix and match where you would combine those licenses based on your requirements. So again, if it's at the edge, if it's running in the cloud, we have cloud offerings as well, or within your core data center, you have that flexibility. And then on top of that, for managing that overall environment, we have something called Prism Central, which is really the manager of the underlying clusters. But we've also recently announced something called Nutanix Central. And Nutanix Central is a software as a service that is running in the public cloud that gives you a single unifying interface across all the Nutanix clusters that you would have within a particular environment, including the Prism Central instances. So a single view across a distributed environment, whether you're running virtualization, containerization with Kubernetes, or these unified storage services in a mixed, hyperconverged, or dedicated environment, all in a single pane of glass. And then in addition to that, we have another software as a service referred to as Data Lens. And what Data Lens provides for you is some of that cybersecurity, ransomware protection that we were talking about earlier. So what it does is it takes real-time audit trails from both the file services and object services. It consolidates that information and then adds intelligence on top of those patterns that we're seeing in. So if you just need something like audit trails to understand user activity, we've had customers that ask simple things like, I just want to understand what got deleted off the system. So you can do an audit trail based on all the deletes that might have occurred. Others might be, based on someone coming or going from a company, you want to understand what they've done within a certain time period. You can export an audit trail detailing all the activity for that end user within that given window. You can then wrap anomaly policies around that activity. So if you want to be alerted to bulk events, someone create a bunch of files, deleted files, renamed, what have you, could indicate accidental deletion or maybe something more malicious, and be alerted to that activity. On top of that, we also have prescriptive detection based on those audit trails, which we refer to as ransomware protection. So if a pattern appears suspicious based on a given audit trail that we're seeing in real time, we can apply algorithms to that and then understand, did that data get encryption as a part of that suspicious activity? And if so, we can more likely than not consider that a threat and a ransomware attack, to which you can do various things. You can just be alerted. You can end up blocking that user and the client associated with that user, or you can make the entire file server read-only. And this applies to your object services as well. So we can actually block the user, the access keys associated with what we consider a ransomware attack. So with that, you're really getting a single platform for all of your infrastructure needs, including unified storage, with a common SaaS model for management, as well as your cybersecurity and ransomware. And on top of that, we really support every use case that you can imagine, whether edge sites, enterprise workloads, AI, ML, and again across the hybrid cloud. All right, so hopefully that gives you a good overview of our unified storage offering with Nutanix. And while we have a lot of built-in data services and capabilities around replication and tiering and what have you, many times we need partners to get us to that next level. So that next level in replication, maybe you're dealing with an environment with heterogeneous storage, and you need an ability to replicate between different vendors. Maybe you need a high number of copies. So a very large multi-master, many to one to many type replication. Maybe you're very focused on the edge, and you need some edge caching, with most of the data living in a centralized data center. So a lot of these use cases, around collaboration, for example, with lock management and active users in multiple sites. In many cases, having a third-party partner and a great partner like Peer helps us get to really give you a complete solution across those examples that I just gave. So to dig deeper into that, I'm going to go ahead and bring Pete in to talk about Peer and their capabilities.
So thanks a lot, Mike, for the great introduction, and especially the overview from the NUS side of things. Today, what I'm gonna touch on is really talking around Nutanix Unified Storage solutions for an always-on world. I'm gonna just hit up an agenda. I'm gonna speak about how peer software work on Nutanix files can obviously increase productivity. What I mean really around that area is that peer's in a unique position to ensure that we can deliver fast local access to files at the edge for distributed teams. We've also got fantastic capability, like Mike mentioned, with file locking to ensure that version integrity is maintained. And also we've got some great new edge caching capability where we can manage storage growth for the edge. So I'll mention more in that area. I'm going to speak about active-active file services. How Peer can enable active-active always on high availability for VDI, user, application data, plus intensive workloads with all the buzzwords like big data analytics, data lakes, AI, etc. And then at the end, I'll just mention on how our software can also aid and assist in the land and expand sort of capability that we have to offer. This is really around the area of coexistence. This is how Nutanix files and objects can be introduced into enterprise environments, phasing those platforms into existing infrastructure, really breaking down the barrier of complex migrations that can be associated with that. So I'll go more into detail around all of these points as I move forwards. The way that we do things is it all resonates around a key core software product that we sell. It's called Peer GFS, Peer Global File Service. It really does reimagine the potential of distributed file systems for today. It's a fantastic enterprise software tool, very easy to install, very easy to stand up, and really complements and adds additional capabilities to the Nutanix portfolio, particularly the NUS portfolio. For those of you on the call, probably already understand the core replication capabilities around NUS at the moment. And what they normally relate to is, one-to-one replication from the AOS side at block level, smart DR, which is read write on the source, read only on the target, many-to-one replication, read, write again, and read only, plus the new home directory sync, which is available in 5.0. So what can Peer really bring to the table here? What can it do additionally to what you've already got built into that NUS capability that already exists? And in actual fact, there's quite a lot. We can really expand the capability of what currently, the NUS side of things can do. So NUS working in conjunction with PeerGFS enables and opens up really any-to-any replication bidirectionally with synchronization plus with distributed file locking to prevent version conflicts. We've got any-to-any sort of bidirectional home directory sync, so that earlier slide about VDI replication, user profile related replication, all of that comes into play. We've got one-to-many file distribution. So, you could have a source system just blasting out to many target systems. And then you've also got the system where we can do one-to-many with edge file caching built in. And all of these topics I'll go through in more detail as we keep going forwards. This is really just emphasizing what PeerGFS can do. Any-to-any file server with DR, this is our near zero sort of active capability, near zero RPO, RTO capability built in. Plus we've got coexistence and we've got namespace management all built into our software. What you will notice though, and what I will highlight and emphasize on this slide, is that in working with Peer software, we truly can provide an active high availability data set across obviously multi-cloud, multi-vendor, hybrid, and multi-site environments. And the way that we do that is it's all done in a read-write way. That means source systems are read-write, target systems are read-write. There's no concept of read-write on a source system, read only on a target system. When Peer comes into the mix, data can be accessed by users, applications, processes on either, if we've just got two locations, either locations or across the whole remit of those locations that are being provided. It almost in a way gives a return on investment. You don't have hardware that's sat there or software that's sat there waiting to become available. Peer can enable that to be used, load balanced in a way that our clients need that to be undertaken. And again, it's really complementing that Nutanix, unified solution side of things quite heavily. The key benefits around our solution, that PeerGFS product that we sell, are really ensuring that we maintain increased productivity for our clients, for their end users. Like I mentioned, we're going to keep data local to where they're going to access it. That means they don't have to wait long times for that data to be downloaded. So the increase in productivity is there. High availability means it's always there, it's always accessible, it's resilient across multiple locations, depending on what clients need. And also it gives a degree of flexibility to our clients as well, that they can pick and choose how they want to go forwards with their environments, with their storage solutions. And then to work around the sort of the solution, it does host cross-platform integration, which means it can scale out into other systems if needed. So other NAS platforms are supported, Windows systems are supported. It's been primarily an SMB shop, but it's now moving into the world of NFS. We also have SMB and NFS capability for unstructured data built into our software across multiple NAS systems. Everything that I talk about, really, the reason why it's there, the reason why it happens, is all to do with our real-time connection logic that we have in place. If we go back in time, we've been working with Nutanix a long time now. We have actually designed one of the APIs with them to enable real-time detection to be accomplished with our software, and making sure that we get to events in real time. It's what enables the software to function. It's what enables us to keep the RTO, RPO low. When we see things, we replicate it in real time, and that's one of our key benefits. Not only do we replicate the data, but the Delta level replication side means that we can be conscientious of that bandwidth and that transition medium in the middle as well. So as we push data across from A to B, we're going to make sure that we just push across the changes that we have noticed on that file and folder based data. Integrated distributed locking is paramount. If you've got two systems that are suddenly now highly available, active, we have to ensure that there is a degree of distributed locking between those locations. We don't want people accessing data on site one and then also be able to do that on site two, because we're obviously going to get ourselves into version conflicts and a bit of a mess. So we're in a unique position again through real time. We can see when people open files, and we can lock that across the environments to maintain that version integrity. We also have a unique ability that we can, in our console up here, Management Center, we can manage DFS namespaces. We can set them up through our console, but also we have a degree of control over that. That's paramount when it comes to failover and fail back situations. We don't want users working on data that potentially could be out of date. And so our control of a namespace will keep them on up-to-date data until everything's back in sync, particularly on a failback scenario. And that's a great piece, a great string to our bow, because if you think suddenly you have multiple locations, across the world, across regions, we can then stand up a DFS namespace across all of those to provide an alias for people to access that data easily. I mentioned this earlier too around file caching. We'll go into this in some detail in a moment, but the edge file caching really is great for us to help consolidate costing in a way. One of the slides that Mike showed earlier showed that there is a lot of unstructured data out there. It's really growing and growing every day, and people are finding it challenging on how they manage that. They try and manage it through the platforms that they have. They use tiering and all sorts of solutions like this. But with Peer, what we can start to do is we can start to do some nice things around file caching, which means we can consolidate the pricing from the edge location. And that's very important, particularly in a world where, again, to refer back to Mike, where was it 50% of data is currently being sort of ingested at the edge. So how you become better with costing those edge locations is also a very important element here. And then last but not least, we also have a feature within our GFS product, which is called malicious event detection. We refer to it as MED, and MED is not really, it's in place really to stop any malicious event replicating across the network. That's the key thing here. If we see anything malicious that looks like it's happening, we are going to stop our replication. We're going to rely on all the great other stuff that Mike mentioned on the Nutanix systems to do, the AV side, the data lens side, looking for ransomware. When we talk about MED in our solution, we're really just focusing in on making sure that we have the ability to stop replication if anything bad is detected. The Nutanix clusters, they're going to be stood up with their backups, etc. And you're going to rely on that to obviously pull the data back from. But the MED part for us is really just making sure that we stop that replication. We don't make the problem worse in a real-time replication environment. So one of those key points, obviously there's 3 points we're going to talk about today, is we are looking at how we deliver fast local data access to files at the edge for distributed teams. And this slide really, it complements that edge caching story for us. And it shows you just a unique architecture about how it can be deployed in the world. So if you had two locations, one was in New York and one is in London, they're both hosting Nutanix files clusters. They're quite scaled out. They're hosting a lot of data, here 100 terabytes. The local users would be accessing those clusters. They're doing their work daily. There's distributed locking between those two locations. But what you'd now start to do is you'd look to scale out to those edges, and you would want those edge locations also to have data, and you'd also want users or processes or services to be accessing that data. But you don't want 100 terabytes on each of those locations. Imagine the costing, imagine how much it will cost to run those servers. So with Peer, from a Windows only edge perspective, what you can do is you can install Windows edge location servers around the environment, and then you can consolidate the data, the hot data that you need on those edge locations. So you can see here that each edge location will facilitate 25 terabytes of data. This is our edge caching capability. It means that all the data is fully hydrated on our master data sets, and the edge will just retain what is local and what is needed for those users out there. It will all play nicely together. You could have distributed locking across everything, active file services across all of this, but your main data, resides on that those two main data centers there that would be hosting those Nutanix files clusters, and then you're unleashing all the power of Nutanix on those two. They're doing the backups. They could be scaling off into object depending on what capability you need from within those two central DCs. We're doing quite an intelligent part on the edge. We're keeping that local hot data local to the users that need it. Those users in Los Angeles, they don't need to come all the way across the country to New York to retrieve their files now, because we wanted a more of a consolidated approach. They're accessing their hot data as and when they need it on those edge locations. So we're delivering that file data to them locally to maintain productivity for them within the environment. And one of the key things here is also the split master brain that you can see. It also means that we don't necessarily mean that we have to have one master that's just in London. That would be an absolute, if the users in Los Angeles wanted to rehydrate their data from a server in London, that's going to take time. Let's pick the closest location to them that's going to host that master data, and we can have this sort of multi-master brain approach within the environment. So it's a very, very good solution here in a distributed world where we can provide this sort of edge caching capability within our software across the world of Nutanix files. Then we've also got the perspective of active global file services for Nutanix. At the heart of everything we do is our peer management center console. It's where we administer everything. It's where we do our configuration. It's the item that will alert within the software. And it will then be fed into with agents. So here you can see now you've got a Los Angeles agent down in the bottom left corner. It's hosting a Nutanix file system. There's an agent there that will feed back into the peer management center. And then we'd start to scale out. We'd have one in London. We could have one in Dubai. And then if needed, an additional string to our bow, because remember, we are multi-platform here, is we could also pull in additional capability. We could also have a NetApp system here that communicates in. And I'll explain more about why I've drafted in that edge platform in just a moment. That data then can all be replicated up into NC2, S3, and where you can then unleash the power of all sorts of things on that data if you needed to. So from the NC2 perspective, cloud clusters, that's a supported configuration now from Peer within the NUS portfolio. And then obviously from that Nutanix cluster perspective, you can then put that data into objects, and you can unleash the power of MI, AI, analytics, all this good stuff. Peer also has the capability to push data directly into that format too, if needed. We can push the data from any one of these edges from a cross-platform multi-approach up into objects if needed, where these services could be run. Remember, we're a non-proprietary software, so it's up to our clients what they do with the data. The reason why I also wanted to bring in the additional hardware platform on the end is this is a very powerful slide that shows one of the items that I wanted to talk about, which was coexistence. Coexistence in this scenario would allow all of these storage systems to play nicely together. So if you had a client that was very focused on one vendor, and you want to try and integrate and get Nutanix files into that arena, into that customer environment, with Peer software, it is very easy. You can install agents across the environment, and then you can have active capability across two dispersed platforms, two very different platforms, that would then synchronize the data between each other. That then allows the power of Nutanix to be shown, its capability to be shown, and then obviously you can slowly remove that from the environment and get those processes and services onto those Nutanix systems. This diagram also strongly highlights the failover capability within our software. Like I mentioned before, potentially in this environment, a user could be coming in through a DFS namespace. They'd be routed to their most local location. So it could be London, it could be Dubai, wherever. And through the power of that namespace, when that site is to fail or something is to go wrong, it would then obviously detect it and it would route them to the next available location. That's all done outside of our capability. That's done through DFSN, harnessing things like site awareness, shortest path algorithms, harnessing a, a trusted technology on the market that we then use and we can manage through our peer management center. And I'll go back to the statistic again, with 50% of data being ingested at the edge, the way that we'll be moving the data up into things like NC2 for it then to be worked on, backed up, it makes peer again a very powerful solution in an environment where people are looking to move data around between edge and the data center. Then we've also got active global file services. This is where we would like have a very, very big installation. This could be 2 Nutanix files instances. It could even be 3, one in New York, one in Barcelona. Peer software is able to keep all data relevant on these Nutanix files clusters in complete synchronization. Here you can see active capability between group shares. So this could be project related data that's being replicated between those 2 clusters, home directories, VDI user profiles, and then those users would obviously feed into those clusters through a namespace and they would access that data. And in real time, that data would be replicated across. It's all done in real time. There's no scheduled element to our software. That means, use Mike as an example. If he's working hard in New York and he updates those files over there on that file system, as soon as he's pretty much done with that action, it's going to be seen by peer software and it's going to be replicated across the network. So you can see really the high availability part breeds resilience, but it also extends the reach and the capability of the Nutanix files clusters. And it ensures that we drive down, the RTO, the RPO to a near zero level, rather than having a degree of scheduled sort of 15 minutes, 5 minutes sort of RTO sort of figures built in there. Again, if those users on the New York side, if they open a CAD file, for example, it's going to be locked on the opposing target side. It's got that distributed lock-in built in. We're going to see when things are going to be occurring in real time. We're going to be locking them across the way. Very important in lots of different industrial sectors, particularly the architect side of things, engineering side of things. The last thing that organizations would want is obviously to be working on a new car design, be working on a new building design, and suddenly something goes off to be made that isn't right because there was a version conflict that was in there. So with PA, you pretty much eradicate this setup because we can actually detect and see that distributed file locking across the 2 locations. And then just to summarize then on the main things that I've gone over today is really like from a company perspective, we really are all about creating a modern distributed file service. We're trying to do that, like I've mentioned, across multi-site, multi-vendor, hybrid and multi-cloud environments, where we allow our customers to have the choice of where they want to put their data in a non-proprietary way. But in this instance, unleashing the power of the NUS side of things, scaling that out and increasing the capabilities of that out across geographically dispersed environments, for example. At the heart of what we do, it's all based off real time. It's that fast local access. It's making sure people don't have to retrieve files, from a long way away, go and make a coffee in the morning before they can start work. It's all eradicated with peer. We ensure that big data is kept local to them where it's needed to be accessed, processed. Our file locking, which I mentioned, saving file conflicts, delta replication, ensuring that we can just replicate what's needed to be replicated across the network. We've also encryption built in on that and compression, so preserving that bandwidth. It's very intelligent how we move data. The high availability angle too, and the automated failover and failback, complemented by the DFS namespace. It's all there within our peer management center, within our peer GFS solution. And then with our automation central backups across, the enterprise. This is also where, if you're working with Nutanix files, we will push the data into that central instance. They can do that backup side of things quite nicely. They can do the snapshot. They can push it off into objects if needed. It it provides a full picture, full capability. Um, new to our sort of portfolio, the local file caches at the edge. It's really important. I'll explain it one more time. It's about making sure that as data is growing and growing and growing, it's making sure that people don't need all that data everywhere. It's being conscientious of the edge. It's making sure that we can be cost effective in how we approach installations, deployments, and our local file cache enables that, from the SMB side, and have all that data then serviced and hosted on your master data set, which is running Nutanix files. And then our MEB feature, our malicious behavior, malicious event detection capability. It's not coming along to replace the AV side of things. It's just making sure that we won't be replicating anything malicious across the network as and when it's happening. We're going to stop the replication when we see things. And what that means is then you can retrieve back from your backups. And don't forget Data Lens, if that's already up and running, that's going to be doing something similar. So you're adding protection layers here to complement everything from a start to finish as a solution. And really, that's it from me. I mean, it was great from Mike, the setup around the NUS side of things. And if you need to contact us here, there's a web landing page, www.peersoftware.com/go Nutanix. And I'll now use this opportunity to bring back Mike and Jess into the call with me, because I can see also there's been a few questions that have been raised.
Awesome. Yes, Pete, you're absolutely right. We have a lot of questions coming in. While you were chatting, Mike was busy responding to people on live chat, and I saw you getting back to some people earlier. A+ to you guys for multitasking today, presenting and live chatting. Gold stars all around. And I know we have a lot of questions that we want to dig into a little bit further. I'm going to get to those in just a moment. I have to say, I love this conversation today. I'm a big fan of these types of partnerships and really digging into how, bringing solutions together, bringing teams together can really expand that reach, as you were talking about, Pete, and the opportunities for what our audience is going to be able to do. So I really do want to thank you guys for such a wonderful presentation and bringing this partnership to us today. Lots of questions to dive into. You guys ready to rock?
We're ready to go.
Yeah, let's go.
Amazing. All right, let's do it. I'm going to start. We had a couple of questions around the size of company that this is going to make sense for. And one of the things that came up that I'm going to call out specifically was when you have smaller teams, and there's always questions around, implementation and training and kind of support on that end. So wondering if we can sort of address, does this make sense for any size organization, any limitations around size of organization that you would recommend for, and then what kind of support an organization can expect, especially if they're a little bit on that smaller side. Whoever's excited to kick us off.
Sure, I can start there. Yeah, on the Nutanix side, we can start very, very small. So we can do single node instances, 2 node instances, 3 node, all in a single 2U form factor. So we have, if you think about state and local government, small towns, we have, we can right size down to a very small footprint for whatever your needs may be. At the same time, we can support clusters of 32 nodes plus. And very large enterprises. So there really is no restriction on or recommendation or perfect scenario when it comes to bigger, small, multi-site, single site. We can really mix and match and get you to the point where you can deploy us in the most effective way for your business. And on top of that, when it comes to unified storage specifically, we license all the way down to 1 terabyte increments. So we can start that small. So if you wanted to start very, very small, just a couple of terabytes, and then grow your licensing or grow the environment as your needs grow, you can do that as well. So it's pretty unique where a lot of vendors have to start big, and that's where you get the efficiency. We can start really small, keep you efficient, you grow as you need.
Perfect. Pete, anything you want to add from your end?
No, I think he's nailed it, and I think that's one of the complementary areas as well with Peer as in this conversation too, that we expand across that whole area too. From small to medium to enterprise. It doesn't really matter. We've got customers that are using our software with Nutanix, that can be quite small to a couple of sites that can increase, that can go up really into lots and lots of locations with petabytes of data. So exactly what Mike's just mentioned.
Well, Mike also gave us, not only did you get an A plus on your answer from Pete, Mike, you also gave us a perfect segue into our next question, because you were mentioning licensing, and we did get a couple of questions about licensing. So I think we've heard a little bit from Mike on that. Feel free to add a little bit more if you want. But Pete, can we ask you to elaborate on that as well?
Yeah, definitely. Let me jump in there first. So from a PS software perspective, it is obviously a software solution. Wherever there is a new Nutanix files cluster, that needs an agent to communicate with that. So the way that we do our licensing, it's based on per Nutanix files instance where our agent's going to be installed, and then per the data quantity. So if you had 10 terabytes of unique data, we would charge per the 10 terabytes. So it's done on the edge location, the agent that's going to communicate with that Nutanix files cluster, and the terabyte data quantity at the end of the day.
Nice. All right, Mike, anything else that you wanted to add?
Nope. Just we align with that very well. So just allocate what you need and grow as you need.
You guys are nailing this. I love this. Just gold star answers every time. I'm going to sneak in one or two more questions as we get close to the end of our time here together. We did get a few questions from a few different folks around industry. And Mike, you've been mentioning some different things with like local governments and things. Obviously, across different industries, we have different compliance issues. There's different needs and requirements. Any sort of industry awareness that you guys would like to share with the audience here today?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and jump in there. Yeah, honestly, for our technology, for our software, it's really across all industries. We have had a particular focus more recently on machine learning and artificial intelligence, and focusing within that arena. That's an emerging technology that has some software dependencies and hardware dependencies with third parties, et cetera. So as we grow within that particular industry, as we offer purpose-built systems for integrating with our partners, that's gonna be a continued area for growth. But it's really across the board for us, whether you're a large enterprise or all the way down to small select accounts. We'll have a solution for you.
I'm very glad you mentioned ML AI. That has come up a lot in questions. Of course, we can't get through any conversation without talking about AI, ML, and that's kind of bringing me around to. I hate to say this, but I know we're keeping things a little bit on the short side today, so we are getting close to the end of our time together. But before I kind of take us into our final questions, I'm wondering if I could ask you guys to give me sort of what makes you excited when you're thinking about everything we've talked about today? What sort of is the thing that lights you up, and putting you guys on the spot as experts, and what should the audience be excited about and kind of thinking about as they walk away from this? And maybe Mike, I'll put you on the spot first, and then Pete, you can follow up.
Yeah, I've been at Nutanix for it'll be 10 years this year, and so I've got to see a lot of growth and changes in the company. And what excites me is just having a platform, like a true platform to support the application, the use case that you need. And I know I mentioned earlier, we're focused on unified storage, but your virtualization needs, including our own hypervisor AHV. If more and more folks are leveraging virtualization, but also leveraging containerization for mobility, and when you talk hybrid cloud, it's very easy to move a containerized application across sites and to different cloud vendors. So having a solution there as well, with Kubernetes that we have natively within our platform. And then obviously those, if you're running in a virtualization environment, if you're running containerization, these might be stateful containers. You're going to need storage to support it. So having the exact same platform that is also going to give you the data services, whether it's the Cozy driver to talk to S3 or the CSI driver to talk to NFS, you have that all in one place under a common management plane. So, seeing the evolution of Nutanix from HCI across all these, these various scenarios that I mentioned, I think is pretty amazing. It has me very excited.
Yeah, lots to be excited about there. All right, Pete, what do you got? What's lighting you up right now?
Yeah, no, it's a really exciting time, especially in the unstructured data arena. Data at the moment is just on some sort of exponential curve. It's there's more and more of it, particularly in our world. Like I said, we were primarily within the SMB world. The exciting stuff for us is now we branch into a new horizon on the NFS side of things, into a Linux-based world. There's going to be loads to come. Sort of, I'm loving what I heard from Mike, around the data lens side of things, around the sort of the cyber side of things. I think that's very important. The vulnerability of unstructured data is obviously still there, and I think Nutanix have a great picture, to try and combat that, mitigate the dangers around that. And so with Peer, we'll continue to be doing what we've always done. We make people's data accessible where they need it around their environments, and we can bridge all these great solutions together, particularly the NUS system. So there's lots, there's lots here that we should be very, happy about moving forwards, because it's an exciting time in our unstructured data sort of arena.
That's a pretty neat place to be. Lots to be, pumped up about and excited about. And I think often, we get focused on, we're so like in it that we forget to, be excited. So there's a lot of cool stuff and a lot of things happening. I did see a few questions coming in from the audience, and I want to flag lots of high fives and shout outs from the audience, but also some questions on what to do next, on how to learn more. So your excitement has caught and is clearly catching, and folks would like to kind of continue this conversation with you. I know I would. So I'm going to ask you guys to give everyone out there sort of a next step, a follow up. What should they do to kind of learn a little bit more or jump right in? And let's repeat that again. Mike, I'll ask you to kick us off, and Pete, you can kind of bring us on home.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Nutanix customer, hopefully you're aware, but if not, for every Nutanix cluster that you have, you get one free terabyte of unified storage. So if you have 4 clusters in your environment, you should have 4 terabytes assigned to your account that you could start to use today. So if you hadn't had a chance to play with it, and again, if you're a Nutanix customer, you can go ahead and install these services right now and leverage that essentially free licensing, based on your environment. If you're not a Nutanix customer and you want to kick the tires a bit, we have something called Test Drive. So if you go to Nutanix.com or just search on Google for Nutanix Test Drive, we have a Consolidate Your Data Test Drive where you can get a look at data lens, you can get a look at Nutanix objects and Nutanix files, and run through different scenarios from deploying an instance to creating shares and buckets to looking at a ransomware event. So that's what I would say for a call of action if you want to get some hands on.
Love it. All right, Pete, what do you got?
Yeah, from our perspective, it's very similar. We love getting the software into the hands of potential clients. It's really easy to install. The engineers here will quite happily aid and assist in that process. It doesn't take a lot. It probably takes less than an hour to get it all up and working, go through some prereqs. So if anyone ever wants to do that, obviously they can use the landing page that we've spoken about already. They can get their hands on the software. They can have clusters replicating between each other. They can have them replicating out to edge locations and test that edge caching capability. It's all there for them to get their hands on. They just need to reach out to us via that landing page.
Perfect. All right. Well, lots of ways to jump in, lots of things to think about, and lots of things to be excited about. That is a great way to wrap up a webinar. I'm sorry to say that we have to wrap it up because I wish we could keep going, but you know what? We'll just have to have you back on again for a follow-up conversation. I want to thank you both for such an interesting presentation, for answering so many questions on live chat, for answering a lot of questions in our live Q&A here. I know there's been a lot of great takeaways and our audience has loved it. I have as well. So thank you both very much for joining us here today.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jess.
Thanks, Jess. Yeah, thanks, Pete.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. Well, before you all take off, I've got 2 last things. One is the prize. Yes, I see the prize up on the screen there. I know you're all ready, but The more important thing is that I want to remind you all to visit that handouts tab. Make sure that you spend some time exploring that section because there's a couple of links there for you, one from Nutanix and one from Pure Software. And I'm going to recommend that you open both those tabs right now. Just hold on to them because we're about to wrap up. On the Pure Software link, you can submit a request for more information. You get a demo. You can maybe see if you want to get a trial going. And the Nutanix link, you can schedule that test drive. Both links have options to connect, to chat, to learn more. So be sure you have those tabs open and spend some more time exploring as we come to a close here on this wonderful webinar and conversation. Thomas, I see your thank you. Thank you on back to you. Thanks for joining us. And before you take off, let's do our prize giveaway. Okay, so we have a $250 Amazon gift card going to someone who is here live and present with us at the webinar. And that special someone is Eric Hamilton from Kentucky. Eric Hamilton from Kentucky. Congratulations, Eric. You have won a $250 Amazon gift card. And we will get in touch about claiming that after we wrap up the webinar, so stay tuned for that. All right, well, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to once again thank Nutanix and Pure Software for making this webinar possible. A giant thank you to both Mike and to Pete for guiding us through such an interesting conversation today. So many great takeaways. Sean says, thanks for the great seminar. I agree, Sean. This was just a great conversation. I love when we get to dig in, and I really do like spending a little time exploring these partnerships and what they can bring to your organization. So I do want to send a big, big thank you to our wonderful speakers here with us today for that. But of course, I always have my biggest high five saved for all of you here with us today in the audience for making this conversation possible. I know that it can feel a bit exhausting living in this fast-paced, always-on world, but partnerships and innovative solutions like we got to explore today, that's what gives us that opportunity to breathe, right? To relax a little bit, to know that our tools are working for us and enabling the success that we are envisioning, that we're planning for in our organizations. It's so exciting to see that coming together. Bjorn, I see your thank you as well. Thank you. All right. Well, I hate to say that it's time to head out, but it is. But I'm so glad that you all came to join in this conversation with us today. And I can't wait to see you all at a webinar again soon. And until then, have an absolutely beautiful end to your day. Thanks all.